We're all good. So thank you very much, Amanda, for coming and being with us tonight. And this is really going to be very easy. But the first thing I'd like to know is, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you start writing? I know that this is your debut novel, which is very exciting.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to chat with you guys. So I am a mom of three, and I homeschool my three kiddos. And this is my debut novel. When I was younger, I wrote some things, and growing up, I did a lot of like journaling and things like that. But mostly I was a story consumer. Like, I love to read, and I love to read everything that I could get my hands on. And then, I think in my heart I always kind of wanted to write a book, but I didn't really know if, I didn't really know what to write. I didn't know where that inspiration came from. I didn't know where to start writing a book. And then when my oldest child, he was a little over a year. So we had like survived that first year with a newborn and all of that. And I had been a counselor before that, and I hadn't been counseling. I'd been home with him. And there was just, I think, a part of my brain that was just wanting some exercise. And so I started, I was like, you know what, I always kind of wanted to write a book, and I'm just going to see if I can do it. And so after everybody would kind of be settled in for the night, that would be my time to just sort of wind down and play around creatively. And so that's sort of how I got started seriously writing for publication. And so that's sort of how everything started. That book was not published and probably never will be, but I sort of just, that novel writing bug just sort of bit me, and I needed to write more. And so I just realized, I think doing that first novel, I realized how much I think in story form, that I didn't realize that, I don't think I realized I was a storyteller until I had written down that first story. So, yeah.
Did you take any training to get there, or
Uh,
did you just start writing your stories?
the very first story that I wrote, I just sort of started writing. I didn't have a clue in the world what I was doing. And one reason it will probably never see the light of day is because I didn't know there was a thing such as genre, and that there are certain genre rules that you're supposed to follow and certain expectations. I just wrote because that's what I wanted to write. And so through the process, I kind of let that novel be a training ground for me. And through that, I started researching and looking at different craft books and different blogs of writers and things like that. And I started getting connected with the writing communities and things like that. So that was really where, I started with writing, didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew what I liked to see in a story. And then I sort of grew from there as far as trying to pursue like being a part of a writing community, having critique partners and things like that to help me look at
Okay.
my novel and grow.
So how old is your oldest son now?
He is 9.
So you did this within 8 years.
Yeah. So I
That's
did
very good.
the first novel took me a while. Like, it took me a long time to write that one because, like I said, it was sort of a hobby. It was, let me see if I can start this and finish this process. So I wrote that one probably over, I don't know, maybe about 5 years for that novel. And then The Edge of Belonging was the next thing that I wrote.
Okay. So the second book that you wrote, you got published.
Yes.
That's great. So what inspired The Edge of Belonging?
I had like I said, finished that other book, and I'm like, I really want to write something else, but I didn't really have any story ideas. I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to write now. And the story idea came from just a really, really ordinary, odd little moment. And I was driving back home from West Tennessee. I was visiting family, and I was on my way back home. It's about a 4-hour drive for me. My kids were asleep in the back, and I was just kind of thinking, I really want to write something else, but I don't really know what I want to write. And I was looking out the window along the way, and in the median, there was a baby bouncer that was just sitting in the median, like someone had just placed it there. And so my little storyteller mind started spinning stories, and some of the versions of the stories were kind of creepy little stories, which are not what I write. But then it kind of, as I was brainstorming and thinking, it became The Edge of Belonging.
Wow. I mean, I want to tell you that when I got trapped in your first in the very first chapter, it was just from the first pages, it just grabbed me and I had to keep going and going. And that is really just amazing and good. And I didn't start crying until chapter 2, and then it didn't stop. So the main characters, I think, are Harvey and Ivy. Pearl too, but she passes away, and that's early, guys. It's not like a spoiler. But tell us, what inspired are either Harvey or Ivy, Rose? Are they based on real people or bits of real people in your life?
In a way, Harvey is. My background is in counseling. And so a lot of my counseling experience, I worked with children and families. And some of those children and families involved foster children. And while Harvey is an adult man that you meet in the book, part of what I wanted to show through his character was that inner child that was there, that was still there, still desiring that love and acceptance all that time. So that's a little bit of where the idea of Harvey came from. So I don't know. They're mostly creations of my imagination, though.
And how about Ivy? Is she just not really, just what?
I mean, there's bits and pieces of that I kind of take from my own life, as far as the concept of, trying to figure out who you are and your place in the world, and how sometimes in the middle of everything you can kind of get a little turned around and backwards. So I mean, yeah, probably my characters a lot are just composites of different people that I've met through life and their stories that they tell me, and so little bits and pieces here and there, I guess.
So your book is what we call a time slip, which means that part of it takes place in a historical period, which is the 1990s. And guys, yes, it's history, okay? And then some of it takes place in current time. How did you manage the two different timelines? And how did you interweave them?
I wrote them separately first, which I've written another book since then, and I did it a completely different way. But this one I wrote separately, and I pieced them together. And so it's like I just kind of had one of the, I guess, the challenges is like you wanted to make sure those different storylines had like the climax at the right points in the story so that it flowed well together. So that was a little bit of a challenge. There was one point where we were going through final edits trying to make sure that everything fit together the way it was supposed to. There was no little pieces of the timelines out of place. And I had all of these chapters printed out, spread out in my floor to make sure that everything was where it was supposed to be. So it was definitely an interesting process. I really found that I love writing a time slip or dual timeline. And I think part of it is I love to work puzzles. And so I like the pieces of the puzzles. I like to piece things together. It's something that's fun for me.
So which timeline came first, the Harveys or Lily's? The one in the past or the current one?
The past was where I originally started. And at one point I had it written through the many different rewrites that it's been through. When it was completely, that timeline was the story. And so through series of events, it ended up being a dual timeline.
Okay. So the 1990s came first, and then you wrote the current one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you wouldn't have thought of like just writing Lily's story and then just like a backstory of, through exposition or something, of coming back to how she got to be, or why she was trying to find out her secret. And I think it's not really a big spoiler to say that the whole part of this, she's adopted, and so it's her journey of trying to find out who her parents were. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of secrets in this book.
Yes.
A lot of secrets. So are you a good secret keeper?
I am a pretty good secret keeper. I'm the kind of person, if you tell me something, like it's locked behind closed doors, nobody will hear it. So I'm a secret keeper.
Well, that's exciting because as you could hear from I don't know if you heard from our one, but apparently a lot of the people who are in this chat tonight have, I wouldn't tell them if it's a really good secret. Okay? I just probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did talk about that you're doing another time slip book. And is your method going to be different? Is your method different for doing this than this one?
This one, the method was different. A little bit, it's how the story structure is a little bit different. With the Edge of Belonging, you have like this past timeline and you have this present timeline, and you can kind of see how the past impacts the present. And then with the one that I'm working on now, you have the present timeline and then you have the past timeline, but it's kind of like these converging lines. So you can kind of see how like the past is converging into the present. So I did it a little bit differently. I did a little like I'll write the present chapter and now I'm going to write a past chapter and then a present chapter and then a past chapter, because I was kind of making these intersecting lines kind of crash into each other a little bit.
So is this going to be your second book or your third book, the one you're working on now?
It'll be my second published book. Yeah.
Okay. And can you tell us anything about it? Want to tease us?
A little bit about this one is, this is just a fun fact, probably mostly just a fun fact for me, but it centers around a grocery store in a rural town, and there's a grocery store in my family. So that is like a small town grocery store that, you know, my family worked at, that my family owned, and multiple family members worked there. So it's been really fun for me to sit down and hear about some of the different stories and things that happened, like little anecdotes of just life running a store in a small town. So that's been really interesting. But this book is about 3 generations of women, and their lives just revolve around this store. And it's another story with secrets in it. And there's like different little layers and secrets. And each one of these 3 women have kept secrets from each other. And these secrets, whether big or small, have made impacts on their lives and where they are at in the present timeline. So there's lots of layers, lots of family dynamics, and how relationships between mothers and daughters, that sort of thing.
Oh, that sounds like that's going to be fun. And when is that going to be out?
That is going to be next fall 2021. Okay.
So you're not done yet, right?
We're in the editorial process, so it's done, but it's getting it to print over the next several months. So that's where we're at with that one. Okay.
So what section of the country are you from? Are you from like Tennessee, Kentucky?
Yes, I'm from Tennessee.
Okay. Because I could just imagine driving the big interstate. I forgot the number, between Memphis and Knoxville, and that's a very, very long road, and it has when I would drive it, I would always have lots of stories and imagination. So seeing a baby carrier there could just I kind of imagine when I was reading this that this was where Harvey was starting from, guys. Okay, that was my concept, because my daughter went to college in Virginia, and we drove because twice a year you drive, because it doesn't matter how much you put in a storage unit, there's still stuff you have to bring back, and it would not fit in all the suitcases for an airplane. And so there was a lot of driving, and Tennessee was always the longest part.
Yes.
In this 2-day trip. Always.
Yes, especially if you're driving from if you're driving north to south, it's not that long. But if you're going from west to east, that is the longest possible drive.
It is. And it would always be the thing is we are going to make this in one day. We are going to spend one day in Tennessee. So we would sleep right on the Arkansas border. So I could say we started fresh in Tennessee, and then we would end up in Bristol, Virginia, which is right on the other side. Right? Yeah. And it's a 12-hour drive. Yeah, it's a long time. It's beautiful, though, I will say that. Okay, so you've already told us what you're working on next. And so the next part of this is going to be what we call our rapid fire questions. And so you don't get to think about these too much.
Oh, no.
Rapid fire. So you just give us the first thing that comes to your mind. So what is your favorite writing fuel?
Coffee. Lots of coffee.
Okay. Any special grind or flavor or anything, or just straight coffee?
Just coffee. My husband for Christmas this past year got me this fancy Nespresso maker, and when I feel like really fancy now when I have my coffee. But it was really great because after that, we all had to stay home for months, and I was like, well, one silver lining thing that I can look at is I've got really great coffee that gets delivered to me every so often, and I have a great coffee maker. So I got to count the good where I can find it. So.
Oh yeah. Did you get a coffee subscription?
Yeah, well, I have this app on my phone and I let them know what I want and it shows up on my doorstep. So,
Oh, that's very nice.
yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed that a lot.
Yes, definitely. That's a good one to have. So do you consider yourself a pantser or a plotter?
I am a split down the middle as far as I like to plot out my character development. Like I know who the characters are at the beginning. I know what I want them, how I want them to end up in the end, and I know what it will take for them to change in the middle. The plot, I'm a little more, I hold that a lot more loosely. I like to discover as I go, and sometimes I discover things about my characters on the way. So I like to know who my characters are before I start, for the most part, and let my plot be a little more loose.
So do you write from beginning to end, like in just one linear swoop, or do you do bits and pieces?
Mostly linear. If I get a little stuck sometimes and there's something that I'm really like a scene I'm really looking forward to, I'll let myself go to that scene that I really want to write. Sometimes I just need to do that so that I can keep going forward.
What is your favorite trope to read?
I don't know. I'm not allowed to think. I like family stories. I don't know. I think it's my counseling background. I like looking at different family dynamics and things like that. So, I like those good family stories, family sagas a little bit.
Okay. What's your favorite trope to write? Because you
Probably
learned about tropes. You told us this. You told us that you figured out it had genres and all that. So did the trope come across you?
I'm always like, I don't know. It's hard for me to choose. I don't know. I like, so far I'm really liking those family secrets. They're coming through my story. So apparently that's what I like to write.
Yeah. Well, we got a big secret baby in this one.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I would say you're into that secret baby thing. Yeah.
I guess that kind of happens a little bit with the next one too. So maybe that's my thing.
Oh, well, what's in the next one too? It's definitely secret.
I guess that's it. You guys, you'll help me figure out what my favorite trope to write.
I mean, that would kill two stones or two birds with the one stone. You've got your secret that you like. You like your secrets, and then we've got the baby thing, and that's the family. And you got to have a woman. Okay, now we're up to 3. Okay, she's doing good. All right, that's cool. So who would you like to be stuck in an elevator with?
I would not like to be stuck in an elevator with anyone. This is kind of hilarious. I have a fear of elevators, which the whole time I'm like standing in the elevator, I'm like, this is a really irrational fear. But I guess if I had to be stuck in an elevator, I would probably want to be stuck with another author, so that we could come up with some zany story. I mean, if it's not crazy enough that we're stuck in the elevator in the first place. Because I can sit there or maybe someone who just really loves to read as much as I do, so we can just nerd out over characters and character arcs and all that stuff while we're stuck.
Well, that's a good thing. Yes. I've been stuck in an elevator, and let me tell you, it's not fun. Oh. Especially, I was stuck in an elevator with a 3-year-old.
Oh no, that's not fun.
In Germany, and I did not speak German. It's still traumatic 40 years later. I just say that for the record. What is the favorite book you've read this year?
My brain, I just go blank anytime anybody asks me that, because I read a lot of great books, and I'm just like, oh. The last one that I read that I really, really liked was The Sewing Season by Katie Powner, and it just released this past week, and it's a really cool story about it's got this older guy named Garrett he's had to give up his family farm, and so he's made some mistakes in his family life, and he's trying he's like really well-meaning, trying to like make things right with his wife and his kids and things like that. But it's like this bittersweet, like you want to laugh a little bit because of like his attempts, and you're just like, oh no, don't do that. Like that's the wrong way to do it. And then at the same time, you feel you have a lot of compassion for him because he's trying to, he's making an effort where maybe he's let things slip through the cracks in the past. And then he has this really unlikely friendship with this high schooler, and she's trying to help him out. So it was a really great book. So I like that one a lot.
Oh, what's the name of that one again?
The Sewing Season by Katie Powner.
Okay. Like SOWING, not SEW.
Yeah, SOW. Like he's a farmer, so
yeah, I was like, wait, there's a man.
Yeah, it could be either one, right?
That would not work, would it? Okay, sorry guys. Sorry, I hit my thing and the little thingy went flying. All right. What is something new you've learned this year in the time of COVID?
Hold plans loosely and just being thankful and grateful for what I do have, and allowing myself to grieve the things that maybe I wasn't able to do over the year. So I guess holding those plans loosely, and but at the same time, taking that moment to say, I did lose out on this opportunity or that opportunity, and process all that too.
Okay, so one thing that we like to do is to give you an opportunity to tell us how we can find out more about you, your website or where you hang out, that kind of thing.
Okay, my website is amandacoxwrites.com. And when you're there, I also have a newsletter sign up and things like that. So if you want to be the first to see like the new title for the next books or the cover reveals and things like that, you can find that there. As far as social media, I have a Facebook page, and I'm on Instagram a lot. And you can find both of those. If you search Amanda Cox Writes, you can find me.
And you homeschool, so how many students do you have?
I have 3. And then they do a co-op, a once a week co-op, and I get to be the English teacher for the high school students. So we're doing world literature this year. So I'm always learning something new.
Oh, that could be very exciting. Does anybody have any questions besides me? I'm not seeing anything. Okay. Okay. Samantha, go ahead.
Hi, Amanda. I noticed a little touch of glee when Sarah was saying that she started crying around chapter 2 and basically is crying throughout the entire reading. So picking up on that, I'm wondering about your actual process while you're writing. So when you are hitting some of these big emotional scenes, are you actively thinking of, oh man, this is really going to catch them and cause the waterworks, or are you doing certain things to try to hit those emotional notes, or is it just part of your overall writing story?
I think it just, I try to find those natural moments. I'm going to blame that on my 3rd grade teacher. She, every day after lunch, she would read Where the Red Fern Grows to us. And being a story lover, I can remember sitting there, and I can remember thinking, someday I would like to write a story that makes people feel something. So I guess maybe that's a little bit where it comes from. I've had a couple people say like, I had a book hangover after I read the book, and I'm like, yes, life goal. Like, I love those books that I experienced that with. And so it's really cool if someone says, well, I experienced that reading your book. So that's, just kind of as an author and as a story lover. And I love those stories where I have to sit back and think about and process what I read. So it's kind of fun for me to see people connect with things that I write.
So we do have another question. It's like, how do you juggle homeschooling and writing?
I get up very early in the morning and I have my little writing routine that I have to stick with it pretty intensely or it won't get done. Life is pretty busy. So I try to get my focused writing time done before they're awake in the mornings, so that I stay on task and I get some things done. And then if there's little moments throughout the day where they're playing outside or something like that, I can sit and watch them and get, maybe less focused writing time. But I try to not focus on writing when they need my focus at the same time, because that gets crazy.
So that means you're like 5 a.m.?
Yeah, 5, 6, depending when I make myself get up. I used to stay up late at night. That's how I started writing. But over the past couple of years, by the time I get to the end of the day, I'm so done. There's nothing left. So I'm like, I'm not a morning person at all. That's why my writing fuel is coffee. And I drink a lot of coffee in the morning because I'm not a morning person, but I sort of had to become a morning person if I was going to keep writing.
Yeah. Well, that was a very great gift that your husband gave you with the
Yes.
of the Nespresso. Yes, definitely. Okay. And what is the most surprising thing? What does that mean?
Was the most surprising
Adding
thing.
on to Rochelle's question of what was, she also was the biggest learn after writing your first book. And then I added a surprising thing.
The biggest thing that I learned, probably the most surprising thing that I learned was probably how much I love the editorial process. I loved it. I love working with my editor. It was awesome. Part of it, I give credit to her being a great editor, because she was very much let my voice be my voice. And then she's like, here's where we can grow. Here's where we can strengthen the story in certain areas. So I was, when you're creating something and you're like, I'm going to turn this over into someone else's hands, what are they going to say? Like, what changes are they going to make? You're like, how much do I hold on to? How much do I let go of? So I was really surprised how much that I enjoyed partnering with someone to edit my work. So that was the most surprising. Trying to think the biggest thing that I learned. I think a lot of it was trusting my own writing instincts. So I learned a lot about that. I think when I first had critique partners, I would try to change things based on everybody's, this opinion or that opinion, or like, wait, this person says I should do this, and this person says the exact, like, that they love this. Someone else says that they don't love this. And that's something I think I learned through the editorial process too. I started to understand that those areas that I felt really good about, those were the better areas of my book. And the ones where I was like, oh, I think this is okay. She's like, no, this isn't okay. Like, give me more here, dig deeper here. You can dig a little bit deeper in this and you can grow in this part. So learning to trust my voice. So when I'm writing the next books, I'm like, okay, I know that I think this scene is good. Okay, then I need to go back and I need to rewrite that scene because that instinct is right, that it needs more work.
Okay. I'm sorry, guys. You have to understand, my contacts are completely full of crying. So I'm looking at the screen. I can't see. So how did you come up with your cover choices? I'm sorry. Can somebody read that for me?
Yeah. How did you come up with your cover choice, your ideas, or mainly the editor or publisher? This Chris wanted to know.
It was a little mixture of both. I was able to give some things that I wanted to see on the cover. I really wanted something that I really did want a road on there because I felt like that was, very much like just really represented Harvey and where he was in life. So I wanted a road. I wanted kind of a rural feel to the book. But a lot of the overall cover designs was up to my publisher. So if you, like in the bottom, you have the road, and then at the top, the little swing, that's kind of shows the split. So the top with the swing is kind of for Ivy and her little swing that she had outside her childhood house. So.
Oh. Okay, well, we're almost at the end of the recorded session. I just want to remind people that you can get a hold of Amanda Cox Writes as your website, and it seems to be also your social media, which is very smart of you. Let me tell you, congratulations on that. And now, You're still going to stick around. Very gracious. We appreciate that, to answer more questions. But I'm going to turn off the recorded session. So everybody, just hang on for a second, please.